Hi, my name is Charlotte, and this channel is about my attempt to become moderately competent at drawing. This week I'm going to be talking about what I've been doing for the last month with figure drawing. It's been a pretty busy month, and so I'm going to talk about it in 3 pieces. The first is to talk about my 200 hours drawing. So for context, if you haven't already watched the previous video I posted about my figure drawing experiences so far, which I'll also link below, I started figure drawing back in the middle of 2021, and because I had never drawn the figure before, I decided to track the time that I spent learning to draw the figure, both in terms of time spent watching instruction and time spent practicing, and then I could run a little experiment so that I could see what kind of difference each 100 hours of instruction and practice made to my ability to draw the figure. I had already done the 0 hour, the drawing that I did before I had done any instruction or practice. And then I also did last year, at the very beginning of 2022, a 100-hour drawing. Exactly the same day a year later, the 8th of January 23, I did this newest drawing at 200 hours. Now, it's not a lot of hours, 100 hours in a full year. Perhaps if I had actually done 2 hours a week for a year, that consistency would have helped and I would have actually built on my previous experience more effectively, but I didn't. I practiced figure drawing very sporadically, and actually for several months at the end of the year, I really didn't draw the figure at all. So I was really very rusty. So I was prepared for it to not be a whole lot better than the 100-hour drawing, and it isn't. It's probably about the same level. It's probably not a lot worse though either. There's not a huge deterioration of skill. It's just not that much better. I will say there were probably some invisible improvements, things that I felt went better as I drew. I didn't find I had to think so hard about the proportions. It felt more intuitive to have the proportions more or less correct. I didn't find I had to think so much about the actual process of doing the drawing. When I did the 100-hour figure, I was very much following a process that I had just learned, and I was still moving through it in a very step-by-step manner, very consciously recalling at each time what the next thing that I had to do was. And I didn't really feel that way with the 200-hour drawing. I felt like I moved around the drawing fairly confidently and fluidly. And this is what I mean by invisible changes. These are things that aren't apparent in the drawing itself, but are apparent to me as the person who produced it. Just before I did that drawing, I started the Love Life Drawing Fresh Eyes Challenge. The Fresh Eyes Challenge is a 10-day mini course. It's called a challenge, but really it's just a little course. And the goal of it is to introduce or reintroduce you to the major 2D shapes and 3D forms that can be used to represent the human form. None of the material in this course was really new to me. It felt very much like revision, but it was really good revision. I felt really rusty at the beginning of January. It had been several months since I had drawn the figure, and this felt like a really great way to reacquaint me with these fundamental ideas about shapes and form. And I even think as you look at my work moving through the 10 days, you can see an increase in my confidence and comfort level with this material as the 10 days progressed. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really helpful for me at the point where I was in my figure drawing practice at that moment in time. And I would genuinely recommend that mini course to really anybody who's near the beginning of their figure drawing experience, is looking to brush the dust off some older skills, or just generally want some concentrated revision. I would say I spent 30 to 40 minutes per day on it. It's free. The references that are used are very good. I thought this was just generally a really great course, and I'd recommend it to anyone. The remainder of my month was really spent thinking about gesture, and very specifically thinking about very short gesture drawings, typically of 30 seconds to 2 minutes in duration. So I followed up the time I had spent on the Fresh Eyes Challenge by revisiting several resources I had previously looked at about gesture, and that included the first chapter of the Michael Hampton book. This is a book that's very widely recommended. I really like it, and you actually can back it up by watching his related gesture lecture, which he has on YouTube. A second thing that I used were some notes I had taken back when I did the Mike Matesi course on New Masters Academy, Drawing with Force. He is someone with an animation background, and his work is a lot about how to draw in a very dynamic and active way, which is really interesting to me. And then finally, I am part of the Love Life Drawing study group, and in that group they have a monthly theme, one of which had previously been gesture. So I sat down to do a lot of short gestures, so 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and also to do some limited number of lines drawings. So if a regular gesture session is where you're given a time limit, a limited line session is where you can take as much time as you like, but you can only put a limited number of marks on the page. And that limited mark practice turned out to be really, really useful to me. And I feel a lot more confident in those abilities now after all this practice. It did highlight to me though that I can't seem to do the middle range yet. I have a lot more confidence with these very short gestures. I have a little bit more confidence with much longer drawings, as for example, this one. This is another 30-minute drawing that I did towards the end of the month, but I can't really seem to do the in-between stage where you spend, say, 5 to 15 minutes on a drawing, and I'm going to be looking at that more closely next month. Also next month, I'm hoping to look at 2 other core skills. The first is using simple forms, cylinders and cubes and so forth, to represent the human form, and also looking at trying to design more appealing shadow shapes. So those are both things that I'm going to be working on specifically next month. I'm also going to try and work on these slightly longer gestures, and I'm going to try to do more long form, probably only once a week though. So that's been figure drawing this month. It's actually been really, really fun. I've really enjoyed my time, and I've looked forward to it every day that, the hour I'm going to spend figure drawing is coming up. So that's been really positive. So the next time I'm going to talk about drawing the figure is in about a month. And in the meantime, next week, I'm going to talk about my first steps into drawing and painting digitally, which has not necessarily been particularly easy. Been a lot of hurdles to getting started on that. So if you want to hear more about that or anything else that I'm studying, please subscribe and follow along, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.